Okay, friends, we're continuing in the Peticha Chokhmah Kabbalah. We're in chapter 1, section 5. And we're going to continue here. In this second stage, Bina, there is almost a complete separation from the light of Chokhmah. This is because the light of Chokhmah is only received by its own vessel, which is the desire to receive, just mentioned above. The Peticha is describing the 4 stages, Chokhmah, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut, through which a complete vessel is formed. The stages through which a complete vessel is formed. It was explained that the shining of the light and its departure, the departure of the light, is what makes the vessel fit for its final function. The shining of the light is in Chokhmah, and the departure of the light is in Bina. Although the departure of the light makes it possible for the vessel to experience lack. This is not why Bina deflects the light. Let's read that again. Although the departure of the light makes it possible for the vessel to experience lack, this is not why Bina deflects the light. It doesn't deflect the light so that the vessel can experience lack. Bina deflects the light of Chokhmah because she wants to give and not receive. She deflects the light, Bina deflects the light because she wants to give and not receive. At the end of the stage of Bina, however, the lack of the light of Chokhmah begins to be felt. At the end of the stage of Bina, the lack of the light of Chokhmah begins to be felt because all of the light of Chokhmah has left the vessel in Bina because the vessel wants to be a giver and not receive. The vessel of Bina wants to give and not receive. Since the vessel for the light of Chokhmah is the desire to receive, since the vessel for the light of Chokhmah is the desire to receive, Bina no longer has a vessel for the light. I'll say that again. The vessel of Bina wants to give and not receive. Since the vessel for the light of Chokhmah is the desire to receive, not the desire to give, Bina no longer has a vessel for the light of Chokhmah because she wants to give and not receive, and the vessel for Chokhmah is receiving. So why does the Peticha say, quote, there's almost a complete separation from the light of Chokhmah? Why isn't there a complete separation? Reasons why in Bina there is almost a complete separation from the light of Chokhmah. 1, since the light of Chokhmah's nature is giving, since the light of Chokhmah's nature of giving is what causes the vessel to want to give instead of receive, some measure of the light needs to remain in the vessel. The light is not in order that the vessel receive, but rather to instill the desire to give in the vessel. So it's saying some measure of the light needs to remain in the vessel during Bina, because the light that is there, the small amount of light that is there, is not in order for the vessel to receive, but rather it's there to instill the desire to receive in the vessel. It's there to instill the desire to give in the vessel. It needs that little bit of light of Chokhmah to connect it with the desire to give, because it's the light of Chokhmah which instilled in the first place the desire to be like God and to give. The light of Chokhmah is the light of experiencing God and performs two functions. The light of Chokhmah is the light of experiencing God and performs two functions. 1. The light gives immense pleasure to the receiving vessel. 2. The light influences the vessel to become a giver and not a receiver. Bina deflects only the first aspect of the light of Chokhmah. Bina deflects only the first aspect of the light of Chokhmah. It deflects that first aspect, the immense pleasure to the receiving vessel. The separation is not complete because the second aspect, that the light influences the vessel to become a giver and not a receiver, that second aspect of the light of Chokhmah remains in Bina. So that's why it's almost complete separation. So that's one explanation. Two, second explanation. It says in this section of the Peticha that, quote, the light of Chokhmah is the essential life force of creation. For this reason, it is not possible for creation to be without Chokhmah. It's not possible for the creation to be without the light of Chokhmah because it is the essential life force of creation. Even if the desire is only to give, there needs to be some minimal reception of Chokhmah, some minimal measure of experiencing God, some minimal reception of the light of Chokhmah, some minimal measure of experiencing God. Bina only deflects the light of Chokhmah that is beyond the essential life force that needs to remain in order to sustain its existence, you could say. 3. Third explanation. Bina is able to receive but chooses not to. It's able to receive the light of Chokhmah but chooses not to. Bina's separation from the light of Chokhmah is not considered complete because Bina can still receive the light of Chokhmah if she wants to. Fourth explanation. The Arizal says, quote, when light departs, it leaves an impression, end quote. Since Bina remembers the light of Chokhmah, because she originally had the light, so it left an impression. Bina's memory of the light, the impression of the light, is why the separation is not complete. There's still an impression of the light. And fifth, final answer. In truth, the light of Chokhmah and the light of Chasidim are one light. The light is one. The difference between them is relative to the vessel that receives the light. The separation from the light of Chokhmah is because the vessel is now interested in giving and therefore desires Chasidim instead of Chokhmah. The separation is not complete because the separation can't be complete. The light is one light. So those are 5 different answers to the question. Okay, continue. Therefore, both the light and the vessel in the second aspect are completely different from the light and the vessel in the first aspect. The vessel in the first aspect, Chokhmah, is a desire to receive. The light drawn forth is the light of Chokhmah. This is not so in the second aspect, because in the second aspect, it's the light of Chasidim and it's a desire to give. The vessel in the second aspect is a desire to give, and the light is the light of Chasidim, which comes from the creation's attachment to the Creator. There are 2 types of vessels. This is the commentary. There are 2 types of vessels. 1, vessels that enjoy receiving, and 2, vessels that enjoy giving. The first vessel is the vessel of Chokhmah. The vessel draws forth the light of Chokhmah and experiences pleasure from receiving. The second vessel is the vessel of Binah. This vessel draws forth the light of Chasidim, which gives the vessel a new nature, that experiences pleasure from giving. First, we need to make an effort to give. Then the light of Hasidim shines in us, and a new nature of feeling great pleasure from giving arises. I want to say a couple things. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but when I remember in my past experiencing the light of Chokhmah, experiencing revelation of divine oneness and unity, and the power of that light was so strong that it immediately made me want to serve the light. It made me want to give back. Because the gift was so powerful, it made me love the giver and want to give back. Like I just wanted to give back because the light, the experience of the light was so powerful, so incredible. So this is how I understand this transition between Chokhmah and Binah. That the light, the feeling of the light is so powerful that the vessel just wants to give back. Help me give back. That was my prayer at the moment. Help me give back. I just want to give back because this is so beautiful and profound. After that experience, then you need to work. You have to make, as the last sentence said, we need to make an effort to give. Then the light of Hasidim, then the pleasure from giving can arise. This is what's called a new nature. A new nature is that we get pleasure from giving. Because as we're created, we get pleasure from receiving. When we do spiritual work and work through Emunah to be a giver, we start to create a new nature. That new nature, we get pleasure not from receiving, but from giving. Not from the light of Chokhmah, but rather from the light of Hasidim. The creation's desire to give causes it to become similar to the Creator. And in spirituality, similarity is attachment. Commentary. Bina desires to give. The meaning of Bina, 1. Bina is related to the word hitbonenut, meaning contemplation. Chokhmah means wisdom. The sages say, quote, a wise person sees what will result, end quote. The simple meaning is a wise person sees the outcome of a matter. In spiritual terms, a wise person sees how every situation leads to experiencing God. A wise person sees how every situation leads to experiencing God. The same way that contemplation precedes wisdom. Bina, desiring to give, precedes Chokhmah, experiencing God. The same way contemplation precedes wisdom, Bina, desiring to give, precedes Chokhmah, experiencing God. That's in the form of below to above rather than from above to below, meaning from evolution rather than involution. In the progression from above to below, the light always precedes the vessel. This is because the light creates the vessel. In our spiritual work from below to above, the vessel always precedes the light. First, we need to attain Hasidim. We need to attain the light of Hasidim. We need to attain a pleasure from giving and serving and being in similarity of form to the Creator, binding ourselves to God. Then, afterwards we can attain the light of Chokhmah, which is the revelation of the divine. 2. Bina means understanding. This relates to a concept our sages speak about of quote, understanding a matter from a matter. The vessel understands that God is giving and therefore also wants to give. The vessel understands that God is giving and therefore also wants to give. The vessel also wants to give. After that comes the third aspect. This is the Vav in the four-letter name of God, Yud He and Vav He. This aspect is called Tiferet. The light of Chokhmah is the essential life force of creation. Commentary. We were created to experience God. We were created to experience God. This is the light of Chokhmah. The light of Hasidim, giving, is light that prepares us for our purpose, but is not the purpose itself. Therefore, the essential life force of the created being is the light of Chokhmah. Right? So the light of Hasidim, just like I said, is preparing the vessel to be fit to receive the revelation of God. But it is not the essential life force of creation, which is Chokhmah. Bina deflects the light of Chokhmah and desires instead the light of Hasidim. Although Hasidim is also light and pleasure, since Chokhmah is the essential life force of creation, at its end stage, Bina also desires the light of Chokhmah. Right? Since Chokhmah, the revelation of God, is the essential life force of creation, at its end stage, Bina also desires the light of Chokhmah. Question: if the light of Chokhmah is the essential life force of creation, how can there be so many people living without awareness of God? Answer: real life is awareness of God. Without any awareness of God, we are not considered to be alive. Real life is awareness of God. Without any awareness of God, we are not considered to be alive. Wow, so, yeah. I first understood that in one way, and then I understood it in a second way. The second way feels more precise. So real life, quote unquote, real life, life outside of the matrix, is awareness of God. Without any awareness of God, we are not considered to actually be alive, right? We're considered to be asleep. You could say awake is a synonym for alive in this case, and asleep is a synonym for not alive. So real life, life outside of the matrix, real awakening is the awareness of God. So as we are currently, we're not actually considered to be alive. Not until there's awareness of God. Therefore, when the light within the creation diminishes to the level of the light of Hasidim without any Chokhmah at all, the second aspect in its end stage is aroused to draw forth some light of Chokhmah to shine within the light of Hasidim. This arousal draws forth a certain amount of the desire to receive. The desire to receive always remains in Bina. It's just that Bina does not want to use it. That was before one of the 5 answers. When Bina is aroused to desire the light of Chokhmah, A measure of Bina's desire to receive is aroused. When Bina is aroused to desire the light of Chokhmah, a measure of Bina's desire to receive is aroused, right? A measure of it. This is a new vessel called the third aspect, or Tiferet. Bina gives birth to the third aspect called Tiferet. Tiferet unifies the two opposite types of light. Okay, this is now we're going to learn about Tiferet. Tiferet unifies, the third world unifies the two opposite types of light, Chokhmah and Chasidim. The beauty of the Sphira is these two lights shining in union. Chokhmah intensifies our sense of self, and Chasidim lessens our sense of self. When Chokhmah and Chasidim are in harmony, it is beautiful. Therefore, this Sphira is called Tiferet, meaning beautiful. The light in the vessel is called, quote, light of Chasidim with an illumination of Chokhmah, end quote. The main aspect of the light is light of Chasidim, and there is also a small measure of the light of Chokhmah. So it's mostly Chasidim and a small measure of Chokhmah. Bina and Zer Anpin, which means another name for Tiferet, are both aspects of giving that desire Chasidim. Bina and Zer Anpin are both aspects of giving that desire Chasidim. The difference is that Zer Anpin, Tiferet, also desires some light of Chokhmah because it is impossible to live without the light of Chokhmah. The main aspect of Zer Anpin, of Tiferet, is Chasidim, and its lesser aspect is a small illumination of Chokhmah. Zer Anpin, Tiferet, desires only the measure of Chokhmah that it needs to live, that needs to sustain its life force. Okay, so that's the third aspect. The third aspect is that there is mostly the light of Chasidim, of giving. Wait a second. So I'll have to ask a question here because it's a bit contradictory. The beginning of this statement here was that Tiferet unifies the two opposites types of light. The beauty of this Sphira is that these two lights shine in union. Right? It seems like there's a balance. Chokhmah intensifies ourself and Chasidim lessens ourself. When Chokhmah and Chasidim are in harmony, it is beautiful. Therefore, it's called Tiferet. So it would make us think that they're shining equally, Chokhmah and Chasidim in Tiferet. But then it goes on to say that the light in this vessel is called the light of Chasidim with an illumination of Chokhmah. The main aspect of the light is the light of Chasidim, and there's a small measure of Chokhmah. Sabina and Zer Anpin, another name for Tiferet, are both aspects of giving that desire Chasidim. The difference is that Zer Anpin also desires the light of Chokhmah, which it is impossible to live without the light of Chokhmah. So the main aspect of Zer Anpin or Tiferet is Chasidim, and the lesser aspect is illumination of Chokhmah. I'll have to ask a question on this. Okay. Afterwards comes the fourth aspect. This is the final He of the four-letter name, the Tetragrammaton. Yud, He, and Vav, He. This is the aspect called Malchut. So the vessel of the third aspect in its end stage is also aroused to draw forth the light of Chokhmah. A longing arises to receive again all the light that was received in the first aspect. The reason it says, all, quote unquote, also aroused is because both Bina and Zerampin are aroused at their end stages to draw forth Chokhmah. Bina at the end is aroused to draw forth a minimal illumination of Chokhmah. Zeranpin at the end is aroused to draw forth all the light of Chokhmah that originally shined in the Sphira of Chokhmah. Zeranpin, or Tiferet, is aroused to draw forth all the light of Chokhmah because, 1, the pleasure of the minimal illumination of Chokhmah in Tiferet, Zeranpin, arouses a desire to draw forth all the light of Chokhmah. So it gets a taste now of Chokhmah coming back into the vessel, and now it wants all of Chokhmah. Gets a taste of the revelation of the divine, and now it wants a complete revelation of the divine. 2, there is a realization that the purpose of creation is not that creation receive only a minimal illumination, but rather all the light of Chokhmah. So it basically is saying the other reason is that it understands, once it tastes the Chokhmah again, that the purpose of creation is not to just receive the light of Hasidim to be a giver, but actually the purpose of creation is to receive all of Chokhmah, not just a minimal amount to sustain life force. Since the light of Chokhmah is no longer clothed in the vessel, commentary, Bina previously deflected the light of Chokhmah. Since the light of Chokhmah is no longer clothed in the vessel because Bina previously deflected the light of Chokhmah, and the vessel is separated from the light, there is a longing for the light. The desire to receive is now fully formed. Commentary. The vessel is separated from the light and develops great longing for the light. Because of this longing, when the light returns to the vessel, it no longer nullifies the vessel like it did in the first stage, in the first Sphira, the first world of Chokhmah. There are now two distinct entities, the vessel and the light. Question: when the light returns to shine in the vessel, doesn't longing disappear and the vessel become once again nullified by the light? When the light returns to shine in the vessel, doesn't the longing for the light disappear and the vessel become once again nullified by the light? Once it's full with the light, with the revelation of God, doesn't it become nullified by the light? Answer: when the light initially filled the vessel, the light nullified the vessel. This means that the created being does not experience itself as separate from the light. Afterwards, when the light returns to shine in the vessel maintains its awareness that it is a vessel for the light. This is because the vessel has now experienced lack and longing. This is the whole creation of the vessel. So originally it was nullified because it didn't yet have the experience of lack and longing. It was just light and vessel created together. Once the light was removed from the vessel recognized itself as a vessel, and thus it was able to maintain its identity as a vessel even when the light of revelation comes back in. Okay, we're almost done with section 5. As discussed above, the shining of the light and then its departure are what form the vessel. Light departs only for the benefit of creation. Light departs only for the benefit of creation. The departing of the light is what develops a vessel that can fully experience the light. The departing of the light was what develops the vessel that can fully experience the light. So it's an essential part of the process. It's for this purpose that the light departs. When we say the light departs, it's not like it sounds. Light doesn't depart. The divine light is always in a state of absolute rest. The meaning of the light departing is that the vessel doesn't see the light anymore. Everything we are discussing is in terms of the vessel's experience. So the vessel doesn't see the light. The light's still there, just like in our world, in our creation of Olam Hazeh, in Galut, in exile paradigm, the light is here, we just don't see it. It's hidden. The light doesn't just suddenly arrive and then we see it, like beaming down upon us. The light is always here. It's just that we are not able to see it. Everything we are discussing is in terms of the vessel's experience. Since the vessel no longer experiences the light, and since it no longer sees the light, it is as if the light has departed. In truth, God's light neither shines nor departs. God's light neither shines nor departs. These terms describe the perception of the vessel. Afterwards, when the light returns, the vessel precedes the light. This fourth aspect is the completion of the vessel and is called Malchut. So we'll learn about the fourth aspect, the Sphira of Malchut, and the completion of the vessel, the final commentary on section 5. Malchut only desires to receive and has no aspect of giving. The purpose of this entire system of progressive stages the Peticha is describing is to give birth to creation. All of this is pre-creation. This is all building up to creation. The complete desire to receive revealed in Malchut. That's the birth of creation. So again, the purpose of the entire system of progressive stages, what I call involution, the Peticha is describing, is to give birth to creation, which is the complete desire to receive revealed in Malchut. Since God has no desire to receive, the desire to receive is the entire essence of what was created. Since God has no desire to receive, the desire to receive is the entire essence of what was created. God created the desire to receive to bestow upon it goodness and pleasure. The meaning of Malchut. 1. Malchut means kingdom and alludes to control. The main attribute of Malchut is the desire to receive pleasure, and all of creation is controlled by this desire. Malchut is kingdom and alludes to control. The main attribute of Malchut is the desire to receive pleasure, and all of creation is controlled by this pleasure. That's why it's called Malchut, because it's controlled by this pleasure, this desire to receive. 2. The spiritual worlds are designed to enable us to experience the divine light. We experience the light to the extent that giving becomes more important to us than receiving. This is controlled by Malchut. The spiritual worlds are designed to enable us to experience the divine light. Yet we experience the light to the extent that giving becomes more important to us than receiving. This process is controlled by Malchut. Detachment from receiving is called Masach, a screen in Kabbalah. Detachment from receiving is called Masach, a screen in Kabbalah. Developing the desire to give is called or choser, returning light. Developing the desire to give developing the desire to give is called or choser, returning light. So there's a masach, a screen, that represents the detachment from receiving. And there's or choser, the returning light, which is developing the desire to give. Masach is associated with being in awe of God, or choser is associated with being in love with God. Right? So that would be that desire to give back because you're in love with God, with the Creator. And the masach is associated with being in awe of God. So it feels like it's like being in awe of God. We're no longer enmeshed in our desire to receive. It creates a screen of detachment from receiving because we're in awe of the divine. 3. Malchut alludes to self-control. We need self-control to attach to God's light. Straightforward. 4. And final, in Malchut, the fact that God is in control is revealed. Malchut is the vessel for the light, and when the light appears, it reveals that God's goodness is controlling everything. So Malchut, in Malchut, the fact that God is in control is revealed. Malchut shows, it reveals that God is in control. Because Malchut is the vessel for the light, and when the light does appear, it reveals that God's goodness is controlling everything. So the revelation that God's goodness is controlling everything happens in Malchut. Okay, that was a long section 5. And God willing, we will start section 6 tomorrow night. Have a wonderful night.